Keep it locked. Mode is home. Good afternoon. Welcome to Mode London. I am El Formosa and you are tuned into the Women in Music discussion. I have three lovely ladies in my presence at the moment. I've got Nikki Acute, Rosie Riot and Cicely Grace. Hello.
Hello. Thank you for having us. Happy International Women's Day, everyone.
Happy International Women's Day. How's everyone feeling?
Good, yeah. It's got a lot to talk about. I'm excited though.
Yep.
It's a good topic. So, yeah.
Definitely. Thank you for giving us this platform as well. I mean, I'm interested about all of our stories and which way it's going to go.
I think it'll be really interesting. I think we've all got a story to tell and it's nice that we've got a variety. So we've got obviously Nikki who does artist management and label management. We've got Rosie who's a DJ and we've got Cicely who's a photographer and then myself who is a broadcaster. So we've got different angles of experiences about women in the music industry. I just want to start off by asking you, what do you think are the difficulties about of being a woman in the industry?
Of course, she's going straight in. And no pressure.
Who wants to go first?
I can if you want.
Yeah.
But although it is like a very open-ended question.
It is.
It's sometimes it's quite hard to pinpoint in terms of sometimes there are just blatant blocks and sometimes things are more subtle and more sometimes it's what isn't happening rather than what is. So for example, I've been a DJ for quite a long time. I started about half my lifetime ago, but I won't divulge how long ago that was. But and on the whole, it's been great. I haven't really, growing up in South London, and we just went to big sixth form college and had loads of mates that were all, we just like partying. But then when I started taking it more seriously, and it became a sort of career choice. Certain things started to happen that were a little bit like disappointing at times. Like sometimes there's that kind of on the negative, like sometimes there's can be a bit of a boys club mentality with certain spaces, and in terms of what isn't said rather than what is said, sometimes it you can feel like a bit of an outsider, and you sometimes want that sort of friendliness and that kind of just warmth, really.
Yeah. And
it's something that you feel. It's not something, if it's not, and you can't really have a go at someone for like, I don't feel like I'm made to feel welcome. It sounds a bit, so you just, because you're all adults, so you just have to get on with your life. But it, and things like music production and learning, and sometimes, there's a lot of jargon and things like that. And there's sometimes I think, as like I teach kids DJing, and I have to sort of adapt how I teach them, and I'm not going to like bamboozle them with terminology that they're not going to understand. I'm going to try and make it so that they can digest it and understand it. And I feel like sometimes there's this I have been at times felt quite isolated, and obviously I'm a bit on the spectrum as well, so I find certain things quite difficult, so that's been another facet to it.
Yeah.
And then there's also been times when people have just been a bit sleazy, to be honest. And I've literally been getting somewhere and been networking and then had the door shut in my face. And if I haven't flirted with someone, they've just sort of like gone cold. And I've had felt like I was going to get an opportunity and it didn't go anywhere. Possibly because an ego wasn't being stroked or something. So that's the bad side. But on the up, there are a lot of like really cool groups, and I think festivals and lineups are getting much better now in terms of being equal. So yeah, but I went off the mic. How's everyone else feel about?
I was going to plus one what you said about there being maybe not being welcomed into, I guess what was like you said, maybe it's a bit better now, but what was kind of a boys' club. I think it also depends on what genres you're working in. I think there's less balance when it comes to our genres, you know, like dubstep, grime, drum and bass, etc. But certainly doors can be closed if you say no to advances from men, and that's a big one actually, which is filled with like loads of disappointment really, because you kind of feel like you're networking and you're working and you're getting on with people on a friendly manner, but if you're not seen as flirting, or if you say no to them, then maybe the door shuts. But sometimes the door doesn't just shut with that person, it can also shut with their network of friends as well. Like I'm sure we've all been in that situation as a female. It's almost as if that's all you've got to offer. And like we were saying earlier, because of that, it feels like women to not just open the door, but to stay in the room, it's like we have to kind of work harder to prove our worth. No offense to any men, and again, I don't really ever want to come across as generalizing, because it's not all men, it's not all women, you know, we're all individuals. But I think probably everyone in this room has experienced that in one way, shape or form. So that's a difficulty. But then also I can see that as a bit of a challenge. I quite like that.
Quite like a challenge.
Yeah, but then maybe that mentality is in me because I've had to be that way. I don't know. You can unravel it in like go deeper. But I'd say, I agree. That's definitely one of the difficulties that I've come across over the years.
What about you, Cicely?
I think same. Just seconding what you said about sometimes it's what's not said. Like, I think there's always like this preconceived idea that women are weak and that we don't really know what we're doing, and I've definitely felt that, like, going into situations, especially like kind of learning to mix as well, having people like mansplain stuff, whereas like I get it, do you know what I mean? But it's like, it's kind of what's not said. Like, I know that you already think that I don't know what I'm doing, but I do. And then just with the advances as well, like, I think that is one of the biggest knocks that I've felt, is like, I thought that I was here because I proved myself. I thought I was here because, like, I'm good at what I do. And then, so imagine, like, I was shooting regularly with this one artist, and I thought we were like building a relationship or whatever. And then I got a boyfriend, and he was like I hit him up and I was like, when are we shooting next? He was like, oh, you've got a man now. And I thought, like, oh my God, like, this is why you was shooting with me. It wasn't because you like my images or whatever. And like, I think that's probably one of the biggest things that I found hard.
It's disappointing as well, isn't it? It's almost like it sends you, like, takes you back a step.
Degrading.
It is. It is.
And does that make you feel a certain way? Like you say, it's degrading. Does that make you feel that maybe you've done something wrong, or you, in a way, and I don't mean that like taking the blame or anything, but you might think to yourself, should I have done this, or should I have said that, or...
I think it's you go to question yourself first, isn't it? Like, I'm always like, maybe it's my fault or whatever, but realistically, like, when you look at the situation in a whole, it says more about that person than it does about you, about that person's motives. Do you know what I mean? So, like, although initially, like, it's hard and it's a bit of a knock, like, it doesn't matter, because I am going to have clients that do value what I do. So essentially it's just getting rid of the dodgy clients in the end, you know?
And that's amazing resilience though, because like we were saying, like that one knockback, that could really have an effect on your whole career. If you wasn't as strong as you actually are.
Definitely.
That could definitely affect your mental health and how you view yourself and how you work with other people in the future, and trust issues and things like that. Ultimately, it's one person, isn't it? So you've got to think, well, it's one person who's decided to behave inappropriately, and I've got X amount of clients that are behaving appropriately and can, come to shoots. And
I think what Nikki said about, maybe it's not just like cutting off that connection with that one person, but their whole network as well. That's definitely something that maybe it's just in my head, but I've kind of felt, if I cut off the advances from this person, maybe I'm not going to get where I want to be. So it's hard, but
why do we think it's like that? You have this culture of boys club, and it's one person, and you say no to one person, then all of a sudden everyone knows, and it's like, oh, she said no to him, so we don't know if we're going to work with her, or we're going to talk about her behind her back or whatever. And
in my personal experience, it's been a bit of a pride issue with the guy that you've said no to. And rather than them get found out that someone said no to them, we're talking about individual situations here, yeah? They've like lied about me. And so that's caused a ripple effect with other people. And now I've got a reputation, even though I haven't done anything.
It's almost like playing the victim.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it wasn't in my head, like it was proven that that's happened. But again, that could be like one solo situation, right? That's not like all men are bad or anything like that.
Yeah, but it's definitely something that I think can knock you for a little bit, if not for a long time, and make you second guess yourself and think, hang on a minute, do I really want to work A, in this industry, and B, do I really want to work with these people?
That's it. And I think it's trust, like trust is challenged then as well, because like you said, if you've built up a rapport with someone, you feel like maybe not friends because you're working together, but if you've built up a good relationship with that people, it's regular work, etc., you see them out, blah blah blah, whatever, and then something like that happens and it's so shocking and surprising to you, that does affect trust. And it kind of, this industry that you're working in, because let's face it, it's like a lifestyle industry as well. Like we don't just work here, we live in it. Like our friends are here, our hobby is here, like everything about this is like our life work, and it can kind of make you question everything when that trust is skewed that way, definitely.
I think that's really difficult because, you know, if you have a day job, you go to work and you get on with your work and you go home and you think, those people aren't my friends, I just work there. But when you're in a culture that we are, and you've got everything with your friends, your work, and, you know, your social life all in one place, as soon as one thing goes wrong, you start to think, oh my God, like...
you question everything.
Yeah, it can be very, very difficult, and especially if you're surrounded by the same circle of people all the time, which can be quite, like, frightening.
Yeah, but also a testament to all of us still sat here.
Yeah.
Because it has been difficult at times, isn't it?
Yeah.
Not just as a woman, as a person, right? But as a woman as well, maybe we've got extra things, extra hurdles that we might need to jump, but we're all still sat here, and I think that's International Women's Day.
Yay! Rosie, I just want to ask you specifically about some of those extra hurdles. What kind of things do you think they are?
What in terms of like...
In terms of being a woman in the industry, what kind of extra hurdles will we have compared to a man?
I do feel like I need to prove myself a bit more sometimes, or work twice. I feel like I need to shout to be heard a lot, to be quite frank. Sometimes I'm like, well, you just listen to me. Because, like, you know, there is sometimes that, like, oh, yeah, she's off on one. Oh, all right, love. Roll the eyes. And it's just like, you know, I think there is that kind of, women kind of thing. And so when, and it depends who you're dealing with. Like sometimes, you know, sometimes you can get, there's a lot of egos. Basically, you're dealing with egos. No matter what industry, what business it is, there's going to be egos. So with that, you have to sort of, you kind of have to, you either do the whole like trying to get someone to like you a bit and try and get to them to be your mate a bit, to get in there with them, and then sometimes you're like, I can't be arsed. Can you just like
recognise me?
Just recognise me and my work, and just, you know, and obviously when it comes to things like flirtations and that kind of thing, I mean, I'm always going to have my integrity, so I'm not going to go there. So if that path ends and gets blocked, and so be it, I just move on to the next. Yeah. But it doesn't mean that it's like just exhausting, and it's just like, you know, it's knackering, and it's like I sort of skip, you know, carry on, but there are moments where I'm like, do you know what, like this is actually quite demoralising at times, and like there are moments where I just like, if you think about it too much, it gets to you. Yeah. But you just have to pick yourself up. Yeah. Carry on, and you know, like the hustle. I think, you know, we're fortunately we're living in an age where women aren't like possibly not being sexualized as much, like in terms of like DJs. You know, back in the day in Ibiza, like, you know, there's sort of a archetypal kind of good-looking like looks definitely came into it, sort of tech house and house scenes and stuff like that, in Europe and on the continent especially, like not so much like Germany and Berlin, but like, you know, like the Ibiza scenes quite at one point, looks came into it. That's not so much the case now. Women can be, you don't have to dress in tight-fitting clothes and stuff like that, and to kind of get hits, and that's brilliant. But then at the same time, that transition, you get some men who are like, don't quite know how to deal with that. They're like almost like, oh, what? Don't understand. Like you're not pleasing to the eye to us in the same way anymore. You're wearing a tracksuit, not a. I don't know. It's just, I think there's this sort of, because the tide is changing. Like, we're in a time of change. The new generation, more kind of underground music is becoming more mainstream, which I love, especially in the UK. And I think you know, it won't be long before the next generation becomes more the norm.
Yeah.
And the slightly older ones won't be so. They'll be kind of like. I'm not going to say pushed out the way. That's really bad.
That's us. That's our generation.
But you know what I mean? As in the cynical old men who were like, button pushers.
Yeah.
Because, you know, you get those sort of vinyl purists who are really sort of like disparaging about every clip they see of a female DJ. And I'm just like, oh, give it a rest. Like, just, you know, and they're really jubilant, happy, great clips of DJing, and they're still complaining, and it's just like, why? Like, everyone's having fun.
Got to move with the times, haven't you?
Got to move with the times. This is it.
Yeah.
So, I guess I just, in a nutshell, just got to move. Just got to keep moving. Keep it moving. That's all I can do, really. Like, yeah. Hashtag keep it moving.
And Cicely, how does your experience differ from obviously coming from photography into DJing now? Do you see any of what Rosie says as a DJ, or is the experience the same for you?
This is a funny one because I started out doing photography, and I built a thing in music, but I've also done other photography and like fashion and stuff, and I feel like in that realm, it's very male orientated. Like, all of the photographers are men. Like, none of them are fashionable. They work for like all these big corporations. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're just technical people. So I felt very pushed out in situations such as like Fashion Week and stuff like that. But then, like, coming into the music scene and shooting in the music scene, I kind of have made my own space. So like, I haven't really felt as though like we were saying before, like, I haven't had to like compete with anyone. I just do my own thing. So I haven't really felt as though like there's not been any negativity really. Well, at least I haven't noticed any, do you know what I mean? Yeah. But then coming into DJing, there's like, I've seen pros and cons for myself, because so Connor, my boyfriend, he taught me to DJ. Yeah. And I know, like, him at the minute, like, coming out of lockdown, he's, like, really struggling with stuff, like, to get back into DJing and, like, finding opportunities and stuff. And I've kind of just, like, taken off a bit, you know, and I'm getting, like, a lot of opportunities. But I know that, you know, he's maybe more technical than I am, but I've got, like, a bigger Instagram following. And I think when people are looking to book females for things, they do take that kind of thing into consideration. Okay. I think they do still take looks into consideration. I do still think, like, follow accounts and stuff. Yeah. Because obviously, if you're going to tick a box, why would it not be somebody that has clout or whatever? Do you know what I mean? But yeah, I'm not finding as though, like, people are pushing me out in any way. I feel like I'm getting, like, a lot of opportunities, which is really good. Yeah. Going back to what we said before, maybe just like the whole mansplaining thing. Yeah. In fact, the first time that I ever played anywhere live, it was at Outlook last year, and some guy actually came up like mid me playing and was like, "Do you want to jump off now, like, just so I can play a couple of tunes?" And I was thinking, wow. No, do you know what I mean? I think it's a bit of a misunderstanding, but I think, like, if that was a male there, and maybe somebody that they looked up to musically, they wouldn't have said that. But because maybe I'm a friend or I'm a female, then that's where the conversation kind of happened.
That's really rude.
Yeah, but it's whatever, isn't it? I said no.
It's really interesting what you're saying, because you're quite new coming into DJing. I'm guessing, well, you said you've been in music for quite a while. Yeah, and I've been, I don't even want to remember how long I've been in music. Like 14, 15 years-ish. So it sounds like already the attitude and the opportunities is shifting. Like you were saying, like, we're in a time of change, isn't it? So it feels like perhaps it's going in the right direction.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
What do you think, Rosie?
Yeah, I think this definitely is going in the right direction. I was looking at a festival lineup the other day. I think it was Strawberries and Cream, and that's made a concerted effort to have more of a gender balance. I think there's one stage that has, I think, Girls Can't DJ on it. It's like, I think, Lisa Mafia, and it was like basically there's loads of female acts on the lineup, and I think they were sponsored by UN Women as well, and Mind, actually, the mental health charity. So I think it's definitely becoming more normal, in inverted commas. In fact, in the last 5 years, I think it's come a long way. I did a little article ages ago about the statistics behind it, and I think at one point it was like about a quarter of lineups or headliners in major festivals were women or non-binary, and I get the feeling that's probably changed by now. I think that has in the last 5 years. So we are coming a long way, and I just think that and I think like the sort of the what I was talking about before with the sort of sexualization, that's I mean, I guess that's just, you're always going to get people like that, really, aren't you? But like, yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think the pressure to not be like that is going to get larger, hopefully, and hopefully just people will kind of get outed as well, to be honest.
Yeah.
Because like,
do you remember we had that kind of culture on Twitter like not too long ago where everyone who had ever wronged a woman was getting outed, and there were loads of stories about abuse and rape and things like that, and people were suddenly speaking out where they weren't before.
I think it's really hard as well, because when you're trying to the ladder to success, when you do get like scared of like causing a fuss about something. You don't, like we said earlier, you don't want to make enemies and then create, then it cuts off a whole group of people or a platform. So you sort of just go off feeling a bit glum and just like, and but I think it is improving. It is like, and obviously you've got things like all these different live stream and video platforms. Social media's changed as well. Obviously lockdown, it's become very visual, and those sort of Berlin based Boiler Room, Keep Hush, all of that's like the sort of newer generation. That's been a bit of a game changer, and I think the UK scene is, I think the music tastes are changing, and that in turn, I think women are just one of the gang. Like you just, it's not, we're not in back in the day, you'd be like, oh, I'll be courting my lady, and you go to work and the lady would be at home, and now it's just like, it's a bit more level, isn't it? So but it is getting better, but it's just that I think attitudes, just to be honest, just be friendly. I think if people were just like just friendlier, like if you have a meeting with a top dog and he's a guy, I had one once, and like fairly recently, and he was a bit dismissive, and I was a bit like, but I just it is what it is sometimes, but you just got to like go and knock on another door. But then it's hard, but then you think, would he be like that with a guy? It's hard to tell. It's hard to tell.
You don't know if it's because of your gender or because that person is the way they are. So what is the reason? You'll never know, really, will you?
Exactly.
It kind of happens in so many different areas, doesn't it, though? Like, I drive, my partner doesn't, but anytime we go to a mechanic, or if the car broke down or whatever, the mechanic will always talk to him.
Wow.
Won't talk to me. Like, I know he's not doing it in like a rude way. It may be a respect thing in his head. I don't really know. I'm not in his brain. But he always, and Ross ain't got a clue about the car at all. But the mechanic's talking to him, and he's just like, yeah. And I'm like, hello, it's my car. Yeah. It happens across the board, like in various ways. But yeah, I think like, it's like, although a bad one, traditional, isn't it? Especially in like this culture, this country, like you were saying, like the courting, the marriage was like basically have my daughter, like you own her now. It was that kind of mentality, wasn't it? And that is changing now.
Yeah, I mean...
Do you think those kinds of attitudes are subconscious? They're so deeply rooted that people don't even realise they're doing them.
They're subconscious until someone calls you out.
Yeah.
And then if someone tells you that that's how you're being and you still carry it on, that's not subconscious anymore. That's a choice.
Yeah.
And I think it depends on the person, isn't it? Some people are doing it out of habit because that's what their family have been like. That's what people have let them treat them like. And others are, they just, I don't know, they kind of believe it, strangely.
So if you were to say, hey, Mr. Mechanic Man, it's actually my car. Can you stop speaking to my boyfriend, please? Do you mind? Do you think that will change his behaviour? Or I think just be like, what you want? Well,
sometimes it gives them a bit of a like shock, isn't it? Because they're so not used to things like that. I'm going to try that next time. In fact, I'm going to see one next week. I'm going to do that. Yeah. I'll tweet it. I'll let you know.
Yeah, please do. That'd be really interesting, just to see what the reaction will be and if they carry on.
I think sometimes as well it's out of respect. I don't know. I think men feel uncomfortable talking to the woman because they might think the man thinks they fancy her or something like that. Maybe I'm thinking about it too much, but yeah, it definitely happens in like not every area, but in other areas as well as like work in music. Yeah.
And what experiences have you had differently? Obviously, you've been in artist manager position, so your experiences will be different to ours. What kinds of obstacles do you think have been in your way?
Oh, have you got all day? How long have we got? No. I think generally it's similar. It's kind of mimicking what's already been said. Mostly that, although it's different for me now because I've been in it for a while and I do have a lot more experience than I used to, but prior it was very much people, men especially, didn't believe that I knew as much as I did.
Okay.
So it was like I had to prove myself. And if I told them something, it could be anything. It could be about royalties, PRS, it could be about a label, it could be whatever. Things that I've got experience in, first-hand experience in. If it come out of my mouth, it would kind of be ignored. But if it come out a man's mouth next to me, they'd be sat there like lapping it up.
Wow.
And that has happened on multiple occasions. In fact, I know I've probably put it into the back of my mind because like you, it's just, you just get on with it, isn't it? I mean, it's probably not the best way of doing it, but if you want to crack on and you don't want things to hold you back or put you down or anything, sometimes you've got to be like, do you know what? They're not worth it. Let's just move on to the people that are.
Pick your battles.
Yeah. But there are people that are worth it. There are so many supportive men in this industry, old, like young, new, like whatever. There are so many supportive men in this industry and women, obviously. But that's another thing as well, is like sometimes women, because it's almost like to be successful in a male-orientated industry, like we've almost had to become slightly alpha female.
Yeah.
And I always kind of have been.
I'm not,
Like, it's true though, and you see that in any industry. Like any industry, the women at the top, even like if you look at like the police, for instance, if you look back way in the 70s, if you were a female officer, you had to fight hard to earn the respect of men, and even then you weren't going to get it. So you had to become this like alpha female. But then what that does is almost create kind of competition between the other females, and you see that sometimes as well, like. But also, again, I keep saying it, but it does feel like things are changing. The fact that we're even here in this forum now having this conversation and we're still here, we're working, you know, shows that things are changing. Yeah. They really are.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's a good example about the being the alpha female, because I feel like when women do that, they can be misconstrued as cold and competitive and quiet in a negative sort of way, when really you're just trying to get by like everyone else.
Exactly. Yeah. If those same sentences were coming from a man's mouth, it's almost like they're commanding respect. Yeah. But from a woman, it is right. It comes across as cold, and you're being harsh, and like, why is your email so short to me? It's like, because I'm busy. Like everyone's busy. But also, I think as well, there's this like unsaid thing of, if we show emotion, it is seen as, it's woman, weak woman. She's time of the month. You know, that kind of attitude. Like that does get flung. That gets really flung around quite a bit, isn't it? It's like but it's like
table over.
it's true. Yeah, I'll show you time of the month, but. But it's true, like we show a little bit of emotion because we work in a creative industry, and if we show a bit of emotion sometimes, again, not always, but sometimes it can be, she's off again.
Yeah,
But if a man said the same thing, oh, he's enlightened, and he's so open-minded and whatever, like, emotion's not bad. Emotion's good.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, I think in a way though, like sometimes if a guy did show that emotion, like because we live in a society where men like still aren't able to possibly or don't feel like they're able to express their emotions in the, obviously there's a lot of male suicide and stuff like that, and I still think socially there is that kind of block sometimes which can affect the psychology of them a little bit in terms of like so they sometimes maybe don't process emotions in the same way. So obviously we'll call a friend, I'll call a friend and I'll chat on the phone for ages or something, whereas they don't necessarily do the same thing. So sometimes it can come out in frustration or in different ways, and that's partly, I think, in parts, a small amount down to societal things and expectations, and it's still, and that can, it's transmuted, like sort of passive aggressiveness and stuff like that. So I still think that the way that men should be men, kind of that kind of mentality that some people have, showing emotion is a sign of weakness, that can sometimes create part of the problem, in that if you're more open and everyone was a bit more just honest with each other, and I think that would help a lot, and you'd feel more easy in yourself, like you'd feel more at ease, like being open yourself, and possibly the pressure wouldn't be so much, because you'd just be like, look, I just feel like this, and it'd be like, okay, cool, rather than just like, I can't deal with this woman. Can I just pass her over to someone else? Like, I feel really awkward because I don't know how to do emotion. Like,
and that leads on to me interviewing predominantly men about their mental health, which is quite weird. So,
well, that's good. That's brilliant. You're helping the. Do you know what I mean? That's part of the progression. Which is really good.
Yeah, I don't feel like. I don't feel, this is going to sound, it may sound bad, I don't feel like I've had hurdles as a woman, but I think it's evident that I'm a woman who is having a conversation about mental health with predominantly men, and a man is not doing it, if that makes sense. Yeah. So it's like, well, Elle, she does mental health and grime. We know Elle's a woman. And she sits down with male artists and gets them to talk about their experiences and their feelings and whatnot, and it's funny because I speak to more men than I do women, which is kind of crazy. I don't know how it's worked out like that, but when I went into it, I didn't know that men would want to sit down and talk to me about anything.
Probably crying out for it. Probably quite like the sort of nurturing energy of a nice sort of,
That's it. I was going to say, it may be actually an advantage that you are female, because you obviously you're you as well, and you're warm and you're open, and you like exude that kind of safety for people. That's not because you're a woman, that's because you're you. However, perhaps men don't see you as that animal instinct like threat because you're another man, like maybe they do feel like they can open up to you more so.
I do wonder, if I was a man, would I have the same reaction as I've had with mental health and music? Be quite interesting.
I always found it really interesting, like when you first started doing the series, because obviously grime is like it's kind of like you have like clashes, and it's very ego driven, and like men, and it's like this hard exterior that everyone's like a tough guy. And when I heard that you were doing this series, I thought, oh my god, like there's no space like it, because there is nowhere where men in grime speak about their feelings, and I think it can only be a positive thing. And even like when you interviewed me, most of the feedback I got, I don't know if it was like the listeners, but most of them were men that messaged me and were like, oh my god, and give me feedback on it. So I think it's a really interesting space, and I think once we see it progress, like it can only have a positive impact.
It's strange you say that, actually. I hadn't put two and two together, but same feedback from my interview that Elle did as well. It was like 90% men. And all really positive, and actually saying like, it's so nice to hear this being spoken about. I kind of, and a couple of people said, I actually feel seen. Like, so that's
amazing.
the kind of platform that you're providing, that you're supplying for people who, like Cicely said, like there was nothing for that.
Yeah, interesting, isn't it? I do still wonder if I was a man, what would it be? Like, what would be the dynamic? But yeah, I guess I haven't encountered anything that's stood out to me that's reminded me that I am a female doing it. Like, I've not had any negative experiences or experiences where I'm made to feel like, oh, well, you're just a woman type of thing. But that doesn't mean that they can't happen.
Well, maybe that's a testament to the choices that you make of the people that you work with as well.
Interesting. Yeah, I never thought of that. Yeah, that could be. Yeah, I like that. Rosie, I'm going to go back to you. I want to talk about your tweet this morning. So you were talking, your Instagram post, so you were talking about some things that we could kind of do, I guess, to make things a little bit easier for women in the industry. You were talking about, you mentioned something about glass ceilings, first of all.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's like across the spectrum, really. That's like really, that's in so many like businesses, you know, like meetings and you know, I think one of the deficits is like there's not enough women CEOs and directors and heads of companies and managers, and you know, as much as we can have more DJs and you know and people on the sort of on the ground, it's the people who are calling the shots, and then that creates a sort of trickle down effect. But one of the things I was thinking that, you know, rather than banging on doors and trying really, really hard and doing late hours, you know, if you worked in an office possibly, you know, like trying to really prove to your boss rather than, you know, the son of someone that gets the job instead, or there's a, you know, degree of nepotism, or, you know, sometimes I just think, just start your own thing. Yeah. I was like, what's the answer? Oh, I know. I'm going to start my own thing.
Yeah. I like that attitude.
Just like, oh, just sod this. Like, I'm just going to, just going to do my own thing. So, yeah, I think like just being an entrepreneur, like I really respect, you know, business women and just, yeah, because it is, I think there is that degree though of, you know, there's quite a lot of alpha females that are that kind of character who become directors and start up enterprises. But I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I think that therein lies the problem though, is that sometimes there is that ego clash where it's like, oh, strong-minded women, oh, I've got to put her in her place, like, you know. Yeah. But obviously, yeah, but that's not always the case. I think, you know, all the things that I set up, I think inclusivity is really important. Including age, actually. I think came out wrong earlier when I was talking about like pushing out the older generation. That was wrong. That came out wrong. I think I was trying to say like, you know, as in there's a new generation now. Yeah. But inclusivity is very, very much something I'm passionate about, including, you know, age, race, you know, young and old. So you obviously young people as well who might not have the means, the financial means to, you know, have DJ lessons, etc. Gender, and also just there's a lot of cliqueiness as well, to be honest. Even female organisations, radio stations can be, you know, a lot of them can be quite cliquey, to be quite honest. Like, not all of them. I mean, they are doing good things, but you know, there's still, just because there's female organisations doesn't mean they're always as massively inclusive. Yeah. I've not always felt like they are. Yeah. So again, what's the answer? I do my own thing. I start up my own thing. And then I can be an example to the other people. And I can say, here's a door. So rather than banging on a door and waiting for it to open, I'm opening my own door. Yeah. And then keeping that door open for lots of people to come through. I feel like I'm on The Apprentice, you know, we're like talking about doors and like analogies and stuff. But like, you know, people, I'm letting everyone through. I'm like, come on. Yeah, you too. Yeah. And mental health is a massive one. Yeah. You know, people that feel like, anyone that feels like an outsider, even when I was a kid, I was like, always going up to people in the playground and be like, are you okay? I was always sort of like, you know, I was always quite an empath, so I sort of, that's just in my nature. So I never want anyone to feel left out. So, which makes it doubly hard when it happens to me. But I'm just like, you know, I'm quite tough. I just like sort of just get on with it. Like, after I sort of get angry, and then I'm like, oh, whatever.
Get on with it. Yeah. That leads me to Cicely. So, Rosie was talking about kind of doing your own thing, and I feel that you're in your own lane in a good way. And that the career that you've carved for yourself through photography and now DJing is going quite well. And there, I don't want to say there's necessarily no obstacles, but you're in a different league. Does that make sense? Yeah.
I think as well, like it's only because of help from my other female friends. Like when at the end of last year, because I started DJing like pretty much last year, through lockdown, and at the end of last year when I was like rounding everything up, I realised like I'd been on radio maybe 7 times, and every single one of them was with another female. I'd been asked by another female. Wow. But bar one. Yeah. So that was like, that really stood out for me, and I thought, wow, like going forward, like what do I want to do? Yeah. And that's kind of like what I've planned out for the next year, like with getting my own radio show, like who I want on to guest with me, and like who I want to bring in as well, because people have done that for me. Yeah. So I think it's like an ongoing cycle, really.
Is it automatically you're thinking, I'm going to bring some females through with me?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah. And is that because of how you feel we're treated in the industry, or just because you feel like women need a little bit more of a platform?
Like you said, how I've kind of like made my own lane. Yeah. I feel that with other women as well. So it's not necessarily like I need to put them on, because everyone's doing it. Do you know what I mean? Like I mentioned this morning, there's a girl, Becky Woodcock, she's from Newcastle, and she's like absolutely smashing it. Like she runs her own night, and she's like booking some amazing artists, and she's always putting on females, local females. And I think like she's making her own lane, and that, like all of us in our room, we're all doing the same. Yeah. So not necessarily like I need to bring people in because they need the help. Yeah. But just because I want to, like people have done that for me. Do you know what I mean? Yeah,
so, 100%. So it's kind of like a giving back type of thing, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
And not passing the buck, but sharing.
Baton.
Yeah.
Passing the baton. Love it. Yes, that's what I meant. And Nikki, I remember when you started your booking agency so many years ago, Acute Promotions. You were the only female in that position that I knew of that was doing something like that. Am I wrong?
Yeah, no. There were female agents, definitely, that were working for the bigger agencies. Yeah. But actually, do you know what? I've never thought about it. Yeah. That's so weird. Yeah, I've never thought about it. To my knowledge at that time, in our scene at least, yes, I was the only one. Wow, I've never thought about it like that.
No. How did you feel at that time?
Like I didn't have a clue what I was doing. it was really just and strangely, all of my friends were male. Yeah. And they were all amazing musicians, DJs, MCs. Yeah. And but they were shit at promoting themselves. Yeah. They were really bad at like marketing and just getting themselves in front of promoters. And I just love gassing. I just love talking to people. So it just kind of happened that way. Yeah. It's so weird that I've hung up about being the only female. There were definitely a couple that came after. Yeah. But that's so strange. But I was like 20, 21, and I was running it out of like a Wendy house at the bottom of my dad's garden. Wow. Putting on my tracksuit, going down the garden to work, sat there with my little laptop. And strangely, we spoke about her actually, Amy, who she's freelance now, but she was label manager of Hospital. Yes. And Shogun, and now she's label manager of 1985, so drum and bass world. Yeah. She sent me her CV. She's from Newcastle. She sent me her CV, and I remember sat at this desk in a Wendy house, and she's written it all like really professional, like she's looking for a job, and I'm thinking, you ain't got a clue who you're sending this to. I ain't even got money to pay myself, let alone take on someone else. Wow. But again, she's a really like forward-thinking, really focused, really strong, independent woman in the industry as well. Yeah. But yeah.
Amazing.
It is amazing. Yeah. It is amazing that we're all here. I love it. And it's so fascinating to hear, because obviously Cicely and I know each other, but to hear your experience as well, it really does feel like it is a lot different to what it was 10, 12 years ago. I wouldn't have even thought twice about, like, I like mixing, but I wouldn't have thought twice about trying to be a DJ back then, especially in drum and bass, because it was pure boys club. And if you were a female, it was definitely like a token situation. To my knowledge, they were never really highlighted or supported. It was really just, look, these are the artists, they're going to be here forever. If you're not in this group, then you're not coming in. But to hear like the support as well, like the females that you said, all the invites that you've had to go on radio that have come from females, that's, like, to my knowledge, really only been happening in the last, like, even just the last 5 years, maybe 6, 7 years, that more females have had radio slots because of supportive stations like Mode, like Subtle, etc. Like, there's so many now that are really, like, raising the fact that women are talented. Just because, you know,
it's actually a big thing, isn't it? To have a slot on a radio station as a female. And I didn't think about it when I started at Mode, but now that you sat here and you're telling me, it's like, oh my God.
It's true. But we have so much thanks to give to the women that came before us. And although it shouldn't be that way, it is, and it has been, you know, we can't change the past. There are so many leading females across the scenes, across the industry, that have kind of paved the way for us to even just be here, sat having the benefit of sat in here having a conversation about what it's like being in the industry. Like, it's really we're in a really fortunate position now. I think definitely.
Do you think more conversations like this need to be had, not just obviously on International Women's Day, we are celebrating the event, but outside of that?
Definitely. Well, all the conversations always need to be had about anything, about equality generally in any area. Like, those conversations do need to be had, especially if they're uncomfortable. Especially if they're uncomfortable. That's exactly when they need to happen. Because that means that something needs to change. And it's not going to change unless the conversation happens, you know? And we've seen that over the last few years for multiple causes, multiple reasons. These conversations are at the forefront now. But yeah, definitely, they always need to happen. Otherwise, how are we going to grow? How are we going to evolve and improve and get better and, you know, equalise everything? It's got to happen.
What more do you think can be done for women in the industry? If I were to give you the baton and say, Rosie or Cicely or Nikki, what would you change, and you could have anything you wanted, what would it be?
Anything I wanted?
Apart from like a lottery ticket or anything.
Oh, right.
More like,
just
how could we help women in music?
I think there should be rules and regulations for festivals and events in terms of there should be a minimum lineups. I really think there should be, because I'm still seeing, you know, I do think there'll be like one woman on a lot of lineups. There's still tokenism going on, and they think, you know, oh, I've got one lineup, that one woman on the lineup.
That's enough.
That's enough.
That's your representation, isn't it?
It's not enough. It should be. We need to normalise, like, women and non-binary people in lineups, and and part of the problem is that there's a lot of promoters and club owners that are still men as well, and also I think a lot of people don't want to take chances. And so, for example, they think these are the tried and tested people, we'll always get them on. I would like to see more gambles taken, more risks, like, okay, this is a new person, but, you know, you've got to start somewhere. Someone has to take that risk. You can't keep doing the tried and tested, because people are going to get bored. Like, there's certain nights I go to and I'm like, oh, this track again, this song again. This for the millionth time. You know, like, not, you know, certain... like, I
know what you mean.
I won't. I'm like, I don't want to get too specific about stuff.
Don't want to name names.
But I would like more gambles and just more equality. It's not a big deal. Like, it's not about who's making the most money. Just want to see more equality. And it should be normalised. It's not a big deal.
Cicely, same question to you. If I could give you the baton, what would you do?
I think who is having the conversations, because I think it's great that we're in this room now having this conversation, but like we've said, like, a lot of the promoters are men, and we can shout until we lose our voices about book more women and all of the changes that we want to see, but unless the people that are already in the situations of power or whatever, like, unless they're really championing it, then it's hard to see it, like a proper change coming from the top. Do you know what I mean? So I think maybe the men that have been around for a while just kind of checking themselves and thinking, right, what more can I do? And it's a difficult conversation because, like, being a fan of music, like, I want to go to an event where the music's going to be good.
Yeah.
And, like, if that is all men, then okay. But, like, also, like, you have to question why. Like, have they not tried to make space? Because there is plenty of women that are as talented. And it's hard because, obviously, the scene has come from mainly men. So to push them all out is wrong. Like, we still have to show the respect of the people that have created the scene for us to work in.
But we still need a true representation of what the scene is.
100%, and we need them people to be championing us.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I agree with that. I think we need more peer support. I think we need, it's not just us standing and shouting with waving our bras in the air. I think we need I think we need men to come forward and say, hang on a minute, we're going to buy our own bras and wave them as well.
I'd like to just add to that though, because like our my main job is a booking agency, and majority of my roster are males. That's not through choice, because what I find, along with a lot of artists that I work with or people that I know that run labels especially, they don't receive demos from females. Wow. So it's not the case that they don't want to, or like they don't want to support females. It's literally that they don't have any material to be able to do that. So that's from the label side of it, because let's face it, it is a boys club. We are part of a boys club. It's majority men in this industry. There are far fewer female artists than there are males. Yeah. So to all of a sudden, because this conversation's come to light, try and put pressure on promoters to say you need 50% females. It's impossible. You wouldn't be able to do that, because you would have a lot of females who perhaps aren't ready. They're not as experienced because they haven't been able to. It's like a loop, they're just, or maybe even not as talented sometimes. Let's face it, like, just because we're females doesn't mean that we're as talented as the men, because you still have to put the time and effort into your craft to be able to get there. And I know it's a catch-22. You have to enter at some stage. But also on the other side, I will say the promoters that we do work with, the large portion of promoters that we do work with, are very, very aware of this. And all of our artists are as well, actually. In fact, we have a clause in our contract that supports this, that our artists are uneasy or uncomfortable or will refuse to perform on a lineup if there isn't adequate female representation. Wow. So this conversation is changing, and like, I'm on the sidelines of this as well. So, and there are promoters that even, although arguably it's for both sexes, but I can't remember the name of it. There's a guy in Manchester who he has I can't remember, it's like an angel or something. So he has people in the raves now, so that if there are vulnerable people, let's face it, they're generally going to be females, but if there are vulnerable people in the crowd, if they've taken drugs or whatever, they can go to these angels to be supported and looked after. So there is so many things like on the ground that is changing, and I would refrain from putting all the blame on the people who put the parties on. That's not to say they couldn't have done more before, but it is definitely getting there. Yeah. Yeah.
You're seeing a positive change.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, we work with some really great people that really want to do something and give opportunities to these girls and females and non-binary as well. Like, they really do. Yeah. And can I just say one point, because I find this really interesting, this conversation, is we've said about tokenism. There are definitely promoters that are booking girls, females, non-binary people who haven't had the experience that the men have had. Sometimes putting them on at times that perhaps don't represent the amount of work or time or effort, because this whole you have to put 10,000 hours into learning a skill or whatever, then perhaps a male counterpart. So how do we feel about the female getting that slot over the male counterpart that perhaps does have the experience?
I think it's definitely something that I've been thinking about a lot going into this. Like I said before, like, a man taught me to mix, and seeing his experiences, it's strange because I'm being given opportunities where maybe I'm actually not qualified yet. Yeah. So I think as a fan, like I said before, I'd rather go to a rave and just hear good music. Like, I think it has to be fair. There's no point in just putting somebody on just to tick a box. It has to be fully thought through,
Yeah, I agree.
It's a hard one, isn't it? Because we're in that transition stage. And there's always going to be a bit of uncomfortable, situation
Someone's
before
gonna
we
be
actually
upset.
get through it,
It's the same with anything. Like, going back to like my interview with you the last time, like, that you have to open a conversation for other people to be able to have the conversation. So although talking about certain experiences is hard,
Someone
if
has to start.
if I don't open the conversation, then other people might not be able to. Do you know what I mean? So definitely.
Yeah, I get that.
We definitely needed 2 hours.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Definitely. There's so much. We could go on for another hour.
No.
We've actually come to the end of our discussion.
We're getting kicked out.
We're getting kicked out.
Is it because
Time's
we're
up.
women?
Super cool. No, I'm joking.
Observer says, get out of my pub. It's time to go. Get out of my pub. Thank you so much, Cicely, Rosie, and Nikki, for coming down. We've had such a blast.
Thank you, Elle.
You're welcome. What a lovely conversation that we've got to have. We've got to keep the momentum going, I believe. And if we can meet up at another time and see what we can put our heads together with and come up with to make change, I think that'd be amazing.
100%.
Thank you to everyone that's locked in and listened. I hope you've taken something away from the conversation. I will be back in 2 weeks' time with The Elle Show. Take it easy.